Does that make sense? Thank you. So this is why, Bismillah, the question being, about when taking from different schools of thought. So this is why I think, though, we're in a situation where it just seems unfair. When madhabs were primarily contained geographically, it made sense to say this is how the Hanafis do it in India. This is how the Shafi'is do it in Indonesia. But when husband and wife are sometimes two different schools of thought because of their background, and now they're all sitting together and there's like shrimp on the plate or there's lobster, let's say. It feels a little strange that one will say, I can't, but you can. Two people are traveling together. One person combines their prayers, one person doesn't. One person has that ease, the other one doesn't. Do you see what I'm saying? So I guess there's kind of started becoming like a kind of a universal madhab of what is like kind of not easy, but what is practical in society, right?
I noticed that like you tend to pray earlier than
Yes. Yeah. So we do pray on the earlier time. So we just take a position and that's it. Like that's how it is, right? So does that answer the question? Yeah, it's probably a longer discussion, right? So guys, Bismillah. We left off we talked about the conditions of prayer, right? Which were quickly the idea that you have to be in ritual purity. So you have to have your ghusl intact, of course, and you have to have wudu. You have to be free from filth on your body, garment, or place of prayer. So 3 places: body, garment, and place of prayer. Third, you have to cover your nakedness, which we defined. Fourth, you have to face the qibla, okay, or the general direction of the qibla. So if you're a little bit off, it wasn't a problem. Number 5, you have to make sure the prayer time obviously has entered. You have to have the intention to pray. So you cannot be like, and what does that just mean? It just means you know that you're praying. In other words, intention is like this. If you were going and somebody said, stop, what are you doing? You said, I'm going to pray. That's your intention. If you walk from your car and you just walk straight into the masjid, then you see Hafiz Naveed leading prayer and you just walk in, Allah Akbar, that's your intention. So intention does not have to be like, I intend to perform. But if you like to do it that way, you can, but you don't have to. And the 7th thing is, you have to say Allahu Akbar. Now, all of these conditions, they can be compromised. Oh, that's strange, sorry. All of these conditions can be compromised if needed. So never think you can't pray. Oh, I can't. So for example, if you don't have anything to make wudu with, you make tayammum. If you don't have anything to make tayammum with, then you still make the actions of prayer. So there's no excuse to not pray. If you don't have enough water to wash off your body, then pray with whatever you have. Okay, you're outside, you messed yourself, just pray. 3rd thing, you don't have enough to cover your nakedness. You just pray, right? Because you may not have enough. This is a very interesting question sometimes where, what do you do? Like, for example, let's say a sister, she doesn't wear hijab normally. She's outside and she got stuck in a place now. She doesn't have access to hijab. She wants to pray. What does she do? What does she do in that situation? But technically speaking, scholars will never rubber stamp this idea and say, oh yeah, pray without hijab, because they don't want to start this idea that it's okay, you can pray without hijab. But technically speaking, how is that different than somebody who just does not have proper clothing and they still pray? You see what I'm saying? So we don't want to start this idea that, oh yeah, it's okay, because then no one will wear hijab. They'll all leave it at home all the time. But there's an idea of, I still have to pray, it's on me. And then you may make it up later, for example, if it wasn't valid. And Allah knows best. Same thing with the only one is the entrance of the prayer time. You cannot face the qibla, but you cannot mess with the prayer time. You have to wait till it comes in. Unless you're combining your prayers, Dhuhr, Asr, and Maghrib, Isha, when you're traveling on the Shafi'i school. That is taking a dispensation, an easy ruling. If you cannot speak, you don't have to say tahrima. For example, you have something in your mouth, someone cannot speak. So or something like that, it just counts, right? So it's understood. Someone who cannot speak at all, even their sign language, they can pray in sign language, Okay, now we talked about the fard of prayer. And remember, this is actually very, 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 very minimal. So if you want to see the fard of prayer, you're going to be very surprised. Okay, now I'm just going to pretend, I'm facing you, I'm going to pretend that I'm praying just to teach this. The fard of prayer is only 6 things. Okay, it would look something like this. And there's a reason why, because these are the fard that mostly mentioned in the Quran, beyond which there is 100% certainty, okay, that this is how it is. So you could say anything, Allahu Akbar. Okay, you don't have to lift your hands. Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Just waiting. 10, 15 seconds. Okay, I'm gone. Not even salam. Or just say salam. That is actually, if you did that, that would cover the fard of prayer. I know sounds very strange. It doesn't sound like a prayer at all. Doesn't feel like a prayer at all. But the reason that Imam Abu Hanifa said this is because he has another layer of obligation called wajib, but it's slightly below the fard. Okay? Now, once you look at what's wajib in prayer, now it starts to make sense. Okay? Now everything will start to make sense. But the thing he's trying to say is, what is the actual bare minimum? What is the actual bare minimum of like ruku, for example? So you don't have to lift up your hands. So you just Allahu Akbar. And your bare minimum ruku is that if you could put your hands on your knees, you would. So even if, normal ruku is what? It's like all the way, I can't even do the 90 degrees, right? You bend completely. But even if you went like this, that's just a minimum ruku. You just touch your hand, or you could touch your hand, just like this. Sajda, sujood, the ideal sujood is having all of your limbs, The bare minimum sujood is what? I mean, they mention it. Let me see. It's a technical thing that you probably couldn't even, let me just see. What was the technicality of it? A part of the forehead, one hand, one knee, one toe of either foot. I mean, that's like the bare minimum. So how are you going to do that? Like, you're going to be like this or something like this? So as you can see, it doesn't look like a prayer at all. But it's just trying to emphasize sometimes, what if you could not do that action? You could at least do something like that and it would still be counted as a sajda, bare minimum. So it's good to know these things. Obviously, you're not going to use it. There's another time where knowing the fard of prayer actually comes in handy. You know when that is? My teacher told me this. If you know you're going to miss Fajr, if you do a long prayer, and because the prayer in Fajr time at sunrise, it cuts off. So if you do a nice long prayer, a proper prayer, it's going to be too fast. Like you have 30 seconds to finish Fajr. Sunrise is coming. So this is where people, you could just do a quick fard prayer where you just, you don't even recite. You say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. 2 words of Quran. Thumma nadar. That's it. And, you just do that so that you catch the prayer time, then you make it up afterwards in its proper way. Now, that looks like a skeleton. So in the same way that if you saw a skeleton, you would not say it's a full body. That's not a full thing yet. Now, the wajib adds a lot more color to it, okay? So what do you say? The wajib is the following. To say Allahu Akbar specifically, still raising your hands is not wajib. So you say Allahu Akbar, okay? To recite the Fatiha is wajib, as well as a short surah or 3 verses equivalent to it in any of the 2 rakats of the prayer. Okay? So in the fard prayer, in the first 2 rakats, you should recite. In a sunnah prayer, let's say the sunnah is 4 rakats, in how many of those rakats do you have to recite Fatiha and surah? All 4. So dhuhr, 4 dhuhr and 4 sunnah of dhuhr are different. Okay, for dhuhr fard, you do Fatiha, Surah, then just Fatiha, right? For Sunnah, you do Fatiha, Surah for every single rak'ah. Why? Because it's treated as though it's 2 rak'ahs combined into into 1 to make 4 for the Sunnah. Okay, so does that make sense? That makes sense? Okay, I know. It takes some time to get to understand this. Now, reciting the Fatiha is a wajib, but it's not fard. But you still have to, wajib meaning you still have to do it. Now, the 3 verses after. So they looked at the 3 shortest verses of the Quran. So what's the shortest surah of the Quran? Kawthar. How many verses is Kawthar? So this is where they said either the shortest surah or equivalent of 3 verses. Now, does anybody know the 3 shortest verses of the Quran? Thumma another, thumma, what is that? Okay, yes. So those are the 3, yeah, you have to go one more. So those are the 3 shortest, there's like 2 words. Thumma another, that's 2 words. That's one ayah. The next one is 2 words, the next one is 2 words. So it's basically 6 words. So they counted all the letters and they said that's 16 letters. And they said the least you have to recite is just 16 letters long. So if you said, or 2 words, for example, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, that's already the minimal. Okay? If you said, Allahu la ilaha illahu, that's already enough. So technically, if you're running late, right, you could just say, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar, and that's enough. You don't have to actually do the whole surah. But should you complete what you're reciting? Of course you should. But we're talking about someone they have very little time, so this is the bare minimum wajib, okay? Now, the other thing is, you should do that recitation in the first 2 rakahs of your prayer, of course, right? And you should perform the prostration with most of the forehead and the hard part of the nose. Have you ever seen sometimes when kids, when they make sujood, they put their head there and they're looking around like this with their nose up, they're like this? So the wajib is head and nose together. Sometimes people don't want to put their nose because it might be hot or something like that, but it is wajib to put both, okay? Next thing is you should do 2 sajdas in a row. 1 sajda, get up, 1 sajda again. So that's 2 in a row. You should be still for at least 1 moment in every integral of the prayer. So what does that mean? So you should, and being still means you should be able to say subhanallah at least once. That's wajib. So for example, you go into ruku, what is the normal sunnah thing to say? Subhan Rabbil Azim. But that's sunnah. It's not fard or wajib. So if I just went like this, Allahu Akbar, subhanallah, and I got back up, I didn't even have to say subhanallah, just the amount of time it takes. Allahu Akbar. You fulfilled the bare minimum wajib. Okay? Don't do it unless you have to go to the bathroom or you're running late for a flight or you're going to miss your prayer for Fajr or something like this. But I'm just letting you know that is the bare minimum. Okay? Then you have to stand, so 1 moment in every single integral of prayer. So in other words, if you went like this, you got up, said, Allahu Akbar, Allah. You have to come to a complete stop, right? Like I'm just saying, subhanallah, subhanallah, right? So if you're coming to, otherwise, when the police, when you stop at a stop sign, and then if you do a rolling stop, the police will give you a ticket. They say you have to come to a complete stop. So you can't go like this. You cannot pray like this. You know, Allah Akbar, like this. People praying like this. No, you have to come to a complete stop, and even for 1 subhanallah, meaning a moment, you're just in that position still. Okay, that's wajib. The next one is the first sitting, the first tashahhud. So there's, in a 4 rakat prayer, how many times do you sit down for tashahhud? Twice. After the first one is not fard, it's wajib. What does that mean? Meaning if you left it out by accident, you can correct it at the end. So does that ever happen to you? You're praying like dhuhr or you're praying your sunnah, and instead of after the second rak'ah, instead of sitting down and doing at-tahiyyatu lillah, you get up for the third. And you're like, oh, I forgot. Don't go back. Just keep going. And then at the end, we're going to do something called the prostration of forgetfulness, called sujood as-sahw. That will correct all your mistakes. So we're going to talk about how to correct the mistakes. But I'm just letting you know that first tashahhud is wajib, and the second one is fard. The last one is fard. You cannot leave that out. The first one is wajib. You should still do it. You must do it. But if you left it out, you can correct it. What wajib here means is if you don't do it, you can still correct it. With a fard, if you leave it out, you cannot correct it. So if I leave out a sajda from my prayer, okay, and I finish my prayer, that's it. Like it's not a valid prayer. But for example, if I forget to recite a second surah, that's not fard. So my prayer is still technically valid. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you forget the second surah, or you forget the Fatiha, then it's not fard. You can still, it's still valid prayer, but it's deficient. But if I forget, for example, my sajda or my ruku completely, then that prayer is not valid. Yeah, like let's say, for example, I finished my prayer and I left out a sajda. I only did it once. I didn't do it twice. And I finished my prayer and I'm gone. That's not a valid prayer. Okay? I would have to perform the sajda in order for it to be complete because it's fard. For a wajib, you have to do it, but if you leave it out, the prayer is still technically valid. So let's say I forgot to recite a second surah in like the third rakat of my sunnah of dhuhr. Sometimes it happens, you forget to recite, Kawthar or Ikhlas or whatever one you do. And that way it's still valid, but it's deficient, but it's not invalid. Okay? Are you all confused now, properly? Not yet? Okay, I'm going to confuse you some more. What's that? It's a lot of information. This is why the intensive format is not easy to study it, but yeah.
If the imam is in prayer,
Mm-hmm.
he breaks the prayer, someone steps in to lead the prayer, and they repeat the Fatiha again. Is your prayer invalid?
No.
Because there was an issue like that happened years ago here, and after prayer was done, we repeated the prayer again because the Fatiha was read twice.
No, it would not. No. What would happen is that would be violating a wajib. And reciting the Fatiha twice, no, it just means that you do sujood sahu, a prostration, forgetfulness, and it corrects it. Then it's still valid, but it's better to repeat it. Okay? So when a prayer is valid but deficient, it's better to repeat it. But if you don't repeat it, like within the time, but if you don't repeat it, it's still technically valid. So if I forget to do a second surah, I just do Fatiha, 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 and I don't do second surah, it is valid because I recited some Quran, but it's deficient. The better thing to do is to repeat it. But once the time elapses, you don't have to repeat it. It's in the past.
But in this case, it wasn't deficient, it was extra.
Yeah, so that's also, it makes it, it is still deficiency because you recite Fatiha once and then you have to move on to the next thing. So even delaying things unnecessarily, for example? Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. If somebody steps in, that's a good question. Maybe they repeated it because they just weren't confident about what to do. Because that you have to go back to the book and check it. So it's okay. Now, the other thing is, it is wajib to recite the entire tashahhud, right, in the sitting. So, at-tahiyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibat. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Right? So the entire tashahhud, this is wajib. If you don't recite the tashahhud, your prayer is valid but deficient. Okay? You have to recite the tashahhud. So even behind the imam. Now, are you supposed to recite Fatiha behind the imam? Actually, no. In the Hanafi school, it is disliked to recite Fatiha behind the imam. In the loud prayer and in the quiet prayer. Why? Because in the Hanafi school, it's like, let the imam do the work. Okay, if he's doing the work between you and Allah, then why are you doing the thing that he's already doing for you? That's the kind of mentality. And actually, what it stems from is this idea that if someone is talking to Allah, Imam is talking to Allah, then what should you do except remain in humble awe of the fact that your Imam is being responded to by Allah? So you just stay quiet completely. That's Imam Abu Hanifa's opinion. However, even his own students felt that reciting the Fatiha after the Imam is a sunnah. So if you do it or you want to do it, it's not the hardcore Hanafi position, but it's fine. Like I have a Hanafi teacher who used to recite Fatiha after the Imam, and especially in the quiet prayers, you can do it, but you don't have to. In other words, if you forgot to do it, you don't have to say, oh no, I made a mistake, or like delay your ruku' now because you have to finish your Fatiha and you haven't finished it, Imam is already in ruku'. You don't even have to recite it to begin with, right? Now this makes it very easy because all you have to do behind the Imam is go Allah Akbar and just stand there. Right? In Dhuhr time, if he's quiet, Allah Akbar. Now, Some people are like, but I can't focus. Well, I don't know what to do. This is a secret. You don't need words to feel like you're in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When your heart realizes that you've come into the presence of the King, you become humbled, and even your silence can be reflective. You don't have to start thinking, what do I think about? You don't have to think about anything. Oh, I can make dua for this, and I can make dua for that. No, don't busy your mind. This now has to shut off. It's your heart that you're present with, right? Imagine you're in the room with a dying patient in a hospital, and they're breathing heavily. Do you have to say something? You're just in their presence because you feel you're in the moment. When you come into a hospital, there's a newborn, when you see a newborn baby sleeping, do you have to say something? You're present. It's just silence. But your heart is there. Same thing with Allah. If we knew Allah, we are in Allah's company all the time. Now the only way you can do this is through dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala outside of prayer. And by getting acquainted with Allah, developing your relationship, your friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, that's a little bit on the spiritual side, yeah. That's a good question. When you're behind the imam, you have to recite. You should recite the tasbihat. So when you begin behind the imam, actually, you know what? Let's answer this question right after we talk about the wajib and the sunnah. Then you'll know, right? Okay. So what else is wajib in the prayer? The first sitting, recite the entire tashahhud, to say as-salam. So even if you said, you didn't say assalamu alaikum, you just said as-salam, as-salam. You finished it. Okay? You finished the prayer. Peace, basically. Salam, salam. But that's not what everybody does. You all know it's very easy to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In witr prayer, which we will talk about, qunut is wajib. Dua of qunut in witr prayer is wajib. We will talk about witr. What else? It is also the Eid prayer, that's wajib, the takbirs, that's something different. For the imam to recite aloud, in the first 2 rak'ahs of the loud prayers, Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, is wajib. If the imam recites quietly, so let's say, for example, it's Maghrib time. No, let's say it's Maghrib time, and you guys are making a small, you're at a work meeting or a school kind of thing, and you make a small jamaat in the corner. The imam has to recite loud. He cannot recite quietly like the horror asr, saying, oh, we can't disturb anybody. You recite, but you don't have to recite really, really loud, just enough for the person next to you to hear it, that's enough. So the imam does not have to, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, to everybody. Just has to recite loud enough so the people around you can hear it. And minimum is so the person next to you can hear it. But this also means that you have to recite silently. If you're alone or with the imam, in the quiet prayers, you're supposed to recite silently. So somebody who's doing dhuhr and asr, and you can hear them, they're violating a wajib. The prayer is still valid, but they're violating the wajib, so it's deficient. Why? Because those are prayers you're supposed to be quiet, right? Now, for the brothers, Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, even if they're praying by themselves, they can recite it loud. So if you're praying Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, you can recite loud on your own. For sisters, even Fajr, Maghrib, Isha, in the Hanafi school, you're supposed to recite quietly. Okay? What that means is, to yourself. Sometimes you're with your kids, you want to recite a little loud so your kids learn. We're not going to be so strict on that. But the point they were trying to say is they're not trying to get to that point where women and men in the masjid are reciting like aloud, and this is not what they wanted to create, right? So, okay, next thing. Now, the emphasized sunnahs of prayer. Okay, so any questions about the wajib part? This is the bare minimum prayer. Anything outside of this is extra. 3 tasbihat, extra. Durood Sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad ala ali Muhammad, extra. Dua at the end, extra. Thana, the opening dua, extra. Anything else you can think of extra? Yes. Yes. So it's valid because you still at least recited 1 ayah. All you had to do was 1 ayah. So it's still valid, but it's deficient. It is deficient. In which kind of prayer though? In the fard or sunnah? Sunnah prayer, good. It is valid. So as long as you recited one ayah of Quran, it's valid. But it's deficient because you didn't do the second surah in the sunnah. Okay? So we're going to talk about what happens if your prayer is deficient. Now, okay, what are the sunnahs of prayer? The sunnahs of prayer are the following. And there's many of them. This is why they say among the sunnahs of prayer, because there's also different opinions about how many there may be. Okay? Okay, before the tahrima, to raise your hands parallel to the ears. Like this. That's sunnah. Now, what happens if you do it up like this? Are you going to hell? No. Okay? It's important to say, right? Because like some people are like, oh, I didn't do it exactly like this. Do you have to hold your ears? No. Sometimes in the Indo-Pak subcontinent, you see people start like this. No, you don't have. What it means is you generally go like this. Imam Shafi'i said you go like this. So it doesn't matter that much. People just, whatever it is, you lift your hands up like this. That is the sunnah. For women, actually, they suggest, and the Hanafi school, now interesting to note, the Hanafi school is one of the madhabs, I think there might be one other madhab, that suggests that women pray slightly modified to men. But you don't have to do that. It is ideal to pray slightly modified. We'll talk about the women's prayer in 1 second. So, sunnah is to raise your hands here, and for women, it's to raise your hands like this. To keep the fingers slightly apart. That's a detail. Imam Shafi said keep it like this. Imam Abu Hanifa said keep it like this. In other words, it's not a big deal. Whether you're like this, whether you're like this, doesn't matter. But it's sunnah to keep it slightly apart. And the palms should be facing the qibla, right? So you're not going like this. You're going like this. For a man to place the right hand over the left hand under the navel, okay, is sunnah in the Hanafi school. In other schools, you'll see they're going like this. Some schools, they're going like this. Maliki school, you just have your hand on the side. Shias also pray like this with their hands to the side. That's called sadal. So, in other words, if you've been doing one or the other, it's just a sunnah difference. So we say hands underneath the navel. For a woman, they say, ideally, is hands on the chest, like this. So she goes like this, Allahu Akbar, like this. Okay, because it's more, the Hanafi school, the prayer of the woman is built on modesty. So this is like this. Now, they didn't make this up. This is taught by the wife of a Sahabi named Darda. So she used to teach the women's prayer slightly differently. The Hanafi school takes from that narration. Other schools of thought said, no, women and women pray the same. So there's no problem. You want to pray like a man, it's all the same. It's fine. But ideally, Allahu Akbar for women, right? Now, it is sunnah to recite the opening supplication of the prayer, the thana. And I'm not going to teach everybody the supplications right now, but you can look it up in a prayer book. It's very easy. So if you leave it out, that's not a problem. When you join the imam in prayer, by the way, if he has not started reciting Quran, you can recite the thana behind the imam. But once he starts reciting, you stop reciting the thana. Number 5, to say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So ta'awudh in the first rak'ah only is sunnah. So when you start, right, you start Allahu Akbar and you break the thana and A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim and then Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim and then you start Fatiha. When you stand up for the second, third, fourth rak'ah, you don't have to say A'udhu Billah again. You just do it once in the beginning. The next time, it's sunnah, just say Bismillah every time. Okay? Now, saying the Bismillah before Fatiha is a sunnah. Okay? In every rak'ah. If you're the one leading the prayer or you're praying by yourself. Now, Imam Shafi'i said that Bismillah is part of the Fatiha. So that's why you'll see some imams, they say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, because they believe that the Bismillah is part of the Fatiha. What we say is no, Bismillah is not part of the Fatiha. It is part of the Quran, but it can float between all the different surahs. Okay? Now, number 7, it is sunnah to say Ameen after the Fatiha. Do we say Ameen aloud or softly in the Hanafi school? Softly. So that's why in a Hanafi masjid, where they're pure Hanafis, they say Wala Dalleen, silence. And all the Arabs are looking around. And the one Arab guy saying, Ameen, right? And that's perfectly fine. And even if you wanted to raise your voice and do it, sometimes I get into it and I say, Ameen, it's no problem. This is just sunnah to do it aloud or softly. If your Ameen coincides with the angels, your du'as are accepted, inshallah. So, however you're doing it, but it's softly is the Hanafi way. And then Rabbana wa lakal hamd or Rabbana lakal hamd. After you get up from Sami Allahu liman hamida, saying Rabbana lakal hamd is a sunnah as well. Okay? And so the Imam says Sami Allahu liman hamida, and you say to yourself Rabbana lakal hamd. Okay? To say the thana, ta'awud, bismillah, ameen, tahmeed silently. All those things is sunnah to say silently. For the Imam to say takbirs out loud is sunnah, not wajib. So if the Imam goes into ruku' or sujood and he forgot to say Allahu Akbar, you just follow him. Because saying takbir out loud is not wajib. It is takbir, the purpose of takbir is it is a signal that you're moving. So it's supposed to signify to others that you're moving. This is why in the Hanafi school, an Imam should make the takbir long enough for people to follow in that motion. So as you're moving, your takbir should be like that. So sometimes you see people from other schools of thought, they go, Allahu Akbar. They go like this, right? And no, that's not how you do it. You would actually, from the starting of your movement as the Imam, Allahu Akbar. Ideally, this is how you do it. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. That's why the Imam is supposed to elongate, because you want to keep all of your prayer with the dhikr of Allah. So as you're moving, you're saying Allahu Akbar so that you're combining the physical worship with the verbal worship and the worship of the heart. Yes?
Saying Allahu Akbar is a sunnah or is that a wajib?
This is a good question. It is a wajib to say Allahu Akbar. But when you're moving in the rest of the movements, it's sunnah. So I want to clarify. The first Allahu Akbar, that's wajib. The ones in between are sunnah. Meaning if your Imam somehow forgot to say it aloud or he even forgot to say it, nothing's going to happen to the prayer. It's just a sunnah in between the prayers, in between the movements. Got it? The first one, wajib. Everything else after that, sunnah. Yes?
Normally what we see is that why Imam says Allah Akbar late, because we don't want the people following him to go before. So that's why Imam says Allah Akbar once he is at the position.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they do. But it doesn't mean that that's what you're supposed to do. So the people should wait. They should time what they're doing with him. So if he's saying Allahu Akbar, you should wait to end the position with the Imam. You shouldn't run ahead of the Imam. We should know not to do that, right? So next thing is, it is sunnah to say the takbirs of going into bowing prostration. Yes, so saying takbir at the different movements is sunnah. To recite the tasbih 3 times in ruku and sujood, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la or Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, depending on ruku and sujood, 3 times is a sunnah. Okay? And let's look at the footnote here. Yes. To say them less than 3 times or to omit them altogether is not, it's makruh to do that. Okay? So if you just I'm in a big rush, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, but you're standing one moment, it is makruh to leave out the tasbihs. So you should do 3 tasbihat. Okay? And if you're going to increase, you should do 3, 5, 7, an odd number is how you should increase them. Okay? Any questions about that?
Are you allowed to say anything else during sajda or ruku?
In the nafil prayers, in the Hanafi school, you should stick to the tasbihat, but you can. You can say, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasan. You can make dua make dua. You can make praise Allah. But generally speaking, in the fard, you should try to stay with the tasbihat. And in the nafil, tahajjud, sunnah, you can say all your duas and your dhikr. Fard, you should stay with what is prescribed from the sunnah. Right? Questions? Yes. There's a whole bunch of questions. Go ahead. We're going to talk about that in a second. There's a whole section on qunut and witr. The other thing was, if the imam has gotten up, then you don't stay in the position saying, oh, I just need to make one more subhanallah. So if the imam gets up, Allahu Akbar, and you're like, subhanallah, you just get right up. So it's better to follow the imam than to stay behind and finish what you're doing, except in one thing, tahiyat, the tashahhud. In the tashahhud, you must complete it before moving on with the imam or before giving salams. But let's say, for example, the imam is finished the prayer and you're still doing tahiyat, you complete it, then you give salams. Or let's say first tashahhud, he has gotten up for the third rakat already, and you're still behind. You wait, you finish tashahhud, then you get up. But when it comes to like tasbihat, no, if he did you want to do 5 and he did 3, you follow the imam and you continue to move. Okay? Okay, let's see what else. Okay, now this is something that a lot of people don't know, and I'm going to tell you a secret. They don't tell you this all the time. In a fard prayer, what is the ruling of reciting Fatiha in the second last, the 2 rakahs in the end? So for example, let's say you have Dhuhr, four rakahs. It's wajib to recite Fatiha and Surah in the first rakat. Wajib to recite Surah and Fatiha in the second rakat. What about the last 2 rakahs? Is it wajib to recite Fatiha? It's sunnah to recite Fatiha. Meaning, if you just stood there on rakat number 3 and 4 and just said, Subhanallah, 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 you can do it. You don't have to recite Fatiha. And if you didn't say anything, you just stood there. That's it. You just stood there for a few moments, you can go into ruku'. In other words, Fatiha is sunnah in the 3rd and 4th rak'ah of a fard prayer. Most people don't like, wait, I thought you have to do Fatiha in every single rak'ah. This is the exception. Because why? There's a narration from Ali radiallahu anhu that they didn't recite Fatiha in the 3rd and 4th thing. Now, practically speaking, should you do this? No, you shouldn't do this. No, practically speaking, you shouldn't skip it. Like I don't skip it unless I have to go to the bathroom or something. Like, it's very rare that I'll skip it. Like I hear something, a loud bang, and then I hear a kid crying. I might skip it. Okay, I have to go to the bathroom, I might skip it. But generally speaking, no, you recite the Fatiha in the 3rd and 4th rak'ah because, first of all the other madhabs say you have to recite Fatiha. And even in the Hanafi school, they don't encourage you, just because you know something is not wajib and you've been doing it, it was normal for you, don't try to leave it for no reason, okay? So, next thing is, it is sunnah to recite blessings on the Prophet ﷺ in the final sitting. That is only sunnah, what they call Salat Ibrahimiyya or Durood Sharif. This is a sunnah, it is not wajib. Yes? I don't see this is the thing. I don't know about other madhabs. Yeah, because if we get into other madhabs, expect that you've heard something different and learned something different. Anything I say, expect that you've also heard something different. Yes, so you may have heard another position. That is not the position of the Hanafi school. Because everything I say, you can say, but I heard this. And I'll say, yes, there's 3 other madhabs. And within those madhabs, there's different opinions too. And then there's the Salafi madhab as well, which is no madhab. And so there's all these different opinions out there. Right? So you're free to follow which one you want. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Now, next one is, after the durood, or what they call Salat Ibrahimiyya, it is sunnah to make a supplication after. Right? One of the supplications of the sunnah from the Quran, you can do a short dua, for example. If you're by yourself, you can make as much dua. I don't mean free dua. I mean duas from the Quran and sunnah. I don't mean free dua. Oh Allah, get me married to so-and-so. Oh Allah, let me eat big house for tonight's food. No. It's like, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Assalamu alaikum. You can do that. رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا, like that. And it is sunnah to turn one's head to the right and the left when you're making salam. But if you didn't turn your head to the right and left, it's not like it's not going to invalidate your prayer. So even if you said Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, and you got up, fine. But it's sunnah to say Assalamu alaikum. And when you do so, right, when you actually do so, on your right, you intend to send salams and greet all the Muslims, the angels, and the imam too. So when you turn your face, why are you saying Assalamu alaikum to this person? We actually don't bring the consciousness of what we're doing in our mind. We say, Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum. No, when you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, I'm sending salams to all my brothers and sisters on this side. And to the angels that are on this side and on this side too. So if you do it with that kind of consciousness, your prayer will become more spiritual. Now, what about the adab of prayer? Adab means, what do we say what adab means? No, but we know the translation of it. What is it? What is the legal ruling of the adab? It's extra. Extra meaning what? Okay. Not sinful if you leave it. Even if you left it every single time and you never did it, you would not be taken into account. But if you do it, what do you get? You get extra reward. Okay? Whereas sunnah is different. If you leave sunnah a couple times without excuse, disliked. But you should not leave it repeatedly without excuse. Sometimes you have an excuse to leave sunnah. But adab, you can leave it and it's up to you. By the way, there are other sunnahs of prayer that is not mentioned in the book. So for example, when you're standing, to keep the feet about...
Assalamu alaikum, the azan time.
Oh, yeah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استووا مستقيموا واعتدلوا تراصوا وتناظروا. الله أكبر. سبحان الله وبحمده. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين. فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر بسم الله الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله استغفر الله العظيم لا إله إلا الله.
Where's the sign? Where's the sign? Oh, no. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we have been doing a worship intensive, the fiqh of ibadat, for the last 5 nights. We are having our last and final session now above in the women's musalla, we are speaking about the adab of prayer and the things that break the prayer and are makruh to do during the prayer. This is probably actually one of the most important sessions. Everyone is welcome to attend, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. You can ask your questions at the end. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's try to leave the questions until the end. And if we need to, because this is the last session, even after Isha, I'll make time to come back up and we can finish out any questions or any loose ends. If anybody wants to come back after Isha for a short time, not long, but I will do that, okay? Because today is the last day. Now, this does not mean you cannot get in touch with me and ask questions any other time. Okay, so where were we? We were at the emphasized sunnahs of the prayer, right? Now we're at the adab of prayer, the things that are the etiquette of prayer. We also mentioned, by the way, in other sunnahs of prayer, that they did not mention in the book, but in the footnotes they mentioned this. And they said that, where did it go? Oh, sorry. Now? That's funny. Something fell off? Oh no, this is just the power. This is the power. Salim? Can you make it Salim again? Or do you think I need to get out of presentation mode? Oh, there. Now let's get out of mode and let's get back in the mode. Yeah, there we go. That's good. Okay, thank you. So, by the way, we also mentioned things like, standing with your feet about 4 fingers apart. So in the Hanafi school, you don't stand with your feet wide apart. That's not in any school, actually. You don't do that. The other one is like to put your hands on your knees when you're in ruku, to put your hands on your thighs when you're sitting down in tahiyyat. That's sunnah, okay? To lift up your finger when you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, right? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu, right? Those are sunnahs. What else is a sunnah here that we are not... there's some minor things. Now for women as well, the women's prayer, the slight adjustments are that when you make a ruku, they don't bend over all the way. They bend over just slightly. So I'll give you an example. So a woman's prayer, ideally according to Imam Abu Hanifa, is basically like, if you had a strange guy standing behind you, how would you want to pray? Basically, that's how you pray, okay? So like they say, they go Allahu Akbar and they clasp their hands over their bosom. And then when they say ruku, they just go like this. So put the hands like this, just like this, right? And men obviously will do much more, but women will just go like this. And whereas men, when they make a sujood, they'll go like this, right? For the women, they actually just go like this, kind of compact. And they sit like this with their feet on their sides. So the barak is on the ground. And they just make a small... The whole point is like be compact, micro and compact. And for women, they can put their elbows on the ground. For men, you're supposed to keep your elbows up. That's ideal. Now, if you don't pray this way and you pray similar to the men, there's nothing wrong with that, if you want to. But I'm just saying that some of the female early Muslims used to pray in this way, so this is narrated from them. There's not a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ about it, but they taught it this way. Okay. Now, among the adab of prayer is number 1, for an imam, for a man to take his hands out of his sleeves. Okay, so if you're walking around like this, you shouldn't be praying like that. You should take your hands out of your sleeves, right? For women, they can even have their sleeves covering their hands, it's fine. You know how sometimes women have their sleeve coming like this and it's fine because it covers them. But for men, you have to take your hands out of your sleeves. You should, it's adab. The adab is to direct your glance. Where should you be looking in prayer? Trick question. Okay, so it is supposed to be downward, but in most schools of thought, you're supposed to be looking at your place of sajda. You're supposed to do that when you're standing as well. So you're looking at your place of sajda. Let me come over here again. But in the Hanafi school, your eyes are in the same position all the time in terms of relative to your face. So, for example, in the Shafi school, you're looking there, and then you're looking there, and then you're looking there. You're still staring at the same spot. In the Hanafi school, they don't do that. In the Hanafi school, you're looking down, but now you're looking like this. So you're looking at your feet. And now you're looking back at that spot, and now you're going like this, and you're looking there, right? And when you get up, you're looking there. So it's not there, at your place of prostration. So you're just looking at your place of prostration in the beginning. So do you see the difference of opinion? But it's not that big of a deal. The whole point is adab. This is not even sunnah, it's the adab. And why do you think you should look in a certain place during prayer? Focus. Focus. In fact, in the Maliki school, you know what they say? You know where you should look? Straight ahead. So the Maliki school, they pray like this, Allah Akbar. They're looking straight ahead. Why? Because they say, there's a hadith that says when you are praying, you are face to face with Allah. So that opinion, Imam Malik said, then you have to face. Why are you looking away? You should look that direction. So what I found is that whichever one you really do, it's like the point is, are you focused on your prayer? Even if it's, and the point is we're not supposed to be looking around. Now, if you're looking around with your eyes, you don't lose anything. So you don't get a sin for like looking around with your eyes. Sometimes you have to do it, okay? You're praying, you're praying outside, some guy's coming up to you, you're gonna look. Now, if you turn your head like this, it's disliked for no reason, but sometimes like your kid is there and you're like, sometimes you do it. But it's disliked to do without a need. Now, if you turn your face, again disliked, but if you turn your whole body, you break your prayer. Once you turn your body away from the direction of the qibla, like completely away. So you're like this. Now it happens sometimes where you may need to turn a little bit. You need to adjust or move around, right? Somebody is breaking through like they broke their wudu, they're going through the saf, and they go like this, and they cut through you while you're praying. As long as your chest is facing the general direction, you're fine, right? But you're not supposed to do that without a need, okay? Now, for example, if this often happens with children, right? You're praying, and then they have to ask the question as soon as you start praying, Allah Akbar, like, Baba, can I do this? Can I do this? Typically speaking, we're not supposed to communicate in prayer. Somebody says salams, we're not supposed to go like this. You just stay quiet. But sometimes you may have to, okay? So sometimes you may have to say, or something. A slight movement is allowed. Excessive movements we don't do, okay? We don't do excessive movements. Slight movement, no problem, if it's not habitual. So you can't be like this. That is going to break your prayer. Slight movements, especially where you still look like you're praying. Once a person from far away, they're like, I don't know, is this guy praying or what is he doing? Then your prayer, you've moved too much. Okay, that's too much. So we're going to get in a second. What else is the adab? It's to try your best to not cough and to keep your mouth closed when you're yawning. Again, these are just manners. If you're giving a speech or you're in an interview, are you going to go, unless you need to, you'll reduce that. Same with yawning. Okay, you see people praying like, Allahu Akbar, like you're yawning in front of Allah subhanahu. Okay, Allah knows that you're tired, but if you try to suppress it, because again, you're acting like you're in the presence of the king because you are in the presence of Allah, right? Next one. But again, if it happens, doesn't mean, okay, that, now, let's see, we didn't talk about witr prayer. Wait, there's the section I missed here. Adab of the prayer. Aha. Okay, the witr prayer, the way that it is prayed is that it's 3 rakats. You pray it after the fard of Isha. So you cannot pray witr before Isha. In fact, witr is kind of like a companion to Isha prayer. So you pray your Isha, then ideally you pray 2 sunnah, then you pray 3 witr. But if you left the 2 sunnah, you can still pray your witr. So I used to see, subhanAllah, sometimes, you pray fard, and sometimes people just pray their witr right away because they're afraid if I leave the masjid, I might forget to pray witr. So they prayed witr right away, and then they pray sunnah at home. It's not the ideal way, but if you're afraid, it's better not to miss witr. Now the way that you pray witr is you first rakat, Fatiha and Surah. Second rakat, Fatiha and Surah. Then you sit down for tashahhud. Then you get back up, and then you do Fatiha and Surah. That's different than Maghrib, because in Maghrib, it is not even wajib to recite Fatiha. It is just sunnah to recite Fatiha. In Witr, the third rakat, it is wajib to recite Fatiha and a Surah. And then you go Allahu Akbar and put your hands back down, and then you do the dua of Qunut. Now, if you don't know the dua of Qunut, right, you can simply say Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab 3 times. For example, you can do any dua. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And if you don't know any duas whatsoever, or you're a new Muslim, no, not Ikhlas. Ikhlas is a surah, it's not a dua. Dua and Quran are 2 different things. Well, I should put it this way. You can have a dua from the Quran, but Surah Ikhlas is not a dua from the Quran. It's a surah. So a dua from the Quran is like Rabbana, all those duas. And if you don't know the dua Qunut, just say Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab 3 times. Minimal. Actually, Allah Akbar, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. And if you're in a rush, you could do it. You're very tired. You're like, I can't pray with her. I have to go to the bathroom. Whatever's happening, Allah Akbar. Say Ya Rab, Ya Rab, Ya Rab. Right? Now, that being said, if you miss the Qunut or you forget it, it's wajib to do the Qunut. So now your prayer is valid but deficient, and you have to fix it. Okay, and I'll tell you how to fix it. Now, let's talk quickly about the things which invalidate the prayer. These are things which, if you do them, your prayer is broken. There's no way to fix it. One of them, to utter a word of human speech, even if it's forgetful. So you're praying and somebody comes in and says, hey bro, and you go, hey, your prayer is broken. Somebody comes in and says, can I go to the store? And you say, Alhamdulillah, yes. Your prayer is broken. Why? Those are the words of people, okay? Even if you're just on your own and you're just lost in the daydreams and you went something like darn, or something. You just said a word of human speech. Your prayer is broken. You have to begin again. Okay. So, however, do not get waswasa that I thought I breathed and I made a sound like a word and I don't know if I did a word, and no OCD, okay? We know what we mean by a word. It means you spoke. It doesn't mean that you went, and it's like, wait, is that a word? Okay. And even when you cry in prayer, this is why as well, you can cry in prayer, definitely, but we don't try to vocalize sounds in prayer other than what you cannot help. You're sobbing, you're crying to Allah. But you wouldn't say something like, why, Allah, why? I'm so sorry. Right away, that breaks your prayer, right? So you stay in the comportment of the prayer, even if you're crying. And it's virtuous to cry in your sujood, for example. Next thing is excessive movement. And the way that they defined excessive movement is if someone is looking at you from far away, they would be fairly certain you're not praying. Okay? And if you're not sure if what a person would think, then assume you're fine. So for example, if I'm praying and I'm going like this, could you still think that I'm praying if I'm going like this? You'd think I'm praying. So it is excessive movement. You shouldn't do it, but it's not going to break your prayer. Okay? But if I'm going like this, for example, let's say I'm like taking my phone and I'm going. Does that look like I'm praying? My prayer is broken. Why? Because I've done something that's completely out of the prayer. Now that doesn't mean sometimes you have to move to do things. So for example, like you can go like this. Like, okay, someone's calling, it's annoying everybody on the thing. If you did that, you're still in a state of prayer. You reach for your phone, off, like this. You're still in the comportment of prayer. But someone's looking at you like, this guy's totally like doing something else, and then that breaks your prayer. Okay, that's a major movement. But if you're not sure, don't worry, keep going. No, that's okay. Like for example, if you're going like this and you take off your glasses or you adjust your hat like this, your hijab is moving, you're just kind of like moving your hijab. That's okay. Don't worry. Okay? Don't worry about that. Okay, next thing is to eat, even if it's a little. What does eat mean, however? Eat means food from outside, inside your mouth. Okay? Eat does not mean the food in between your teeth, you swallow it. So like, that was good. If you swallow that, that does not break your prayer, actually. Okay? So it was Ramadan, you just broke your fast, you just had some dates, and you went to pray right away, you forgot to rinse your mouth. Okay? And you're like this, you're like, Doesn't break your prayer. Okay, you got some food stuck in your teeth. They say, in fact, even a chickpea, if you swallowed it from inside your mouth, because you started the prayer already with it inside your mouth. And it's impossible to avoid for a lot of people. But the better thing to do, it's more superior, if something comes in your mouth, you can even go, or, you can take a tissue, slight movement. Same thing with like if your nose is running or something and you were like, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. You're fine. Little slight movements. You don't go, no, and then do all that, right? I used to see somebody doing that. Every prayer, he would take out his handkerchief and blow like, So slight movements are okay. Next thing, so even eating or drinking at all, you're not supposed to do that. Take a sip, of your chai while the Taraweeh is going on. You can swallow it. Or you can spit it out. You can just put it on your sleeve or something, or in a tissue, or you can just hold it there. It's no problem. Now, you cannot pray with chewing gum in your mouth. Technically speaking, and I mean the chewing gum with the flavor, because if it's like brand new gum, then you're still juicing the flavor, right? Same thing, because then people will pray in their mouth with tobacco, chewing tobacco, and they're like this. And then somebody's going to like while you're praying, come on. You have pan in your mouth, and you're going, it's, first of all, a dirty habit. Yeah, of course, it's not a good habit. But, as if something's going down your throat actively, then it's like you're not supposed to be doing that. But like if it's dead gum, and it just, I remember once one of my kids, they just put the gum in the upper lip, and they prayed. Is the prayer valid? I said, yeah, the prayer is still valid. It's like old used gum. Technically, you should not be, but now this is the debate, right? Because you're not supposed to drink anything. So even swallowing the flavors, you're not supposed to do it. If you're in doubt, don't worry. Okay, if you're in doubt, always assume everything's okay. This is the place where people get it wrong. They think if you're in doubt, you should be scared. If you're in doubt, everything is okay. I just want you to remember that. Okay. Next thing, to cry aloud or to moan out of pain or due to a calamity, as opposed to the remembrance of Jannah and Jahannam. So if you're crying out of remembrance of religious things, in other words, you're crying for a religious reason, okay, you make noise a little bit, that's fine. If you're crying because you're in pain, for example, you're like, ow, 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 and you're praying, that's kind of like not crying for the sake of the prayer itself. Or you're like, you're mourning someone, someone's lost, someone passed away or something, or that's not the crying in prayer that we're supposed to be doing. So you just control your voice from making loud noises and so on. You can sob and cry softly, but when it comes to paradise and Jahannam and Jannah, then there's a lot more that is excused because you're actually involved in the prayer more. You get what I'm saying? So it's for the sake of the prayer. Now, you cannot say salam back to someone to greet them. You cannot shake someone's hand. I remember one person I know, my friend, he was in the Marines. He joined the Marines. This is 25 years ago. And he's a Maliki. So so they pray with their hands to their side like this. And they were doing some type of like an activity in the woods, in the forest. So he just went off to the side and he went, Allah Akbar. And he was like this. And then somebody came to cross his path. One of the other Marines came to cross his path and he stuck his hand out like this. So the guy went like this and he said, and shook his hand like that. He didn't know what was going on. So that would actually break your prayer in the Hanafi school if you shake someone's hand. To respond to someone's statement by saying something. So, Dad, can I go to the store? And you said, La ilaha illallah, meaning yes. if you use words in order to respond to someone, then you can't do that, even if it's a phrase of the Quran. So for example, if I say like somebody says, you know, hey, is that the book? Can I take the book? And I say, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, meaning that's the book, okay? So even if I'm using Quran to speak to somebody, it doesn't count, right? So, it counts, and it counts as speech, and it breaks your prayer. To turn one's torso away from the direction of the Qibla, okay? That will break your prayer because you're no longer facing the Qibla. So you're going like this. Now, torso does not mean a little bit here and there. It means that your chest has completely faced a different direction. Your shoulders are now, kind of perpendicular to the Qibla. To make supplication using words that resemble human speech. In other words, you're sitting down, At-tahiyatu lillah, you say, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala kama sallaita ala Ibrahim. Then you say, Oh Allah, marry me to this lady. Oh Allah, give me this job. Oh Allah, this breaks your prayer. Because it's the prayer, it's a human speech and human dua. So even in your sujood, then the question is, well, isn't sujood the time to make dua? Yes, it is, but not with human speech. So either you use the words from the Quran, or if you want to make it in English, you know, this is how you make dua, or in Urdu or whatever, then make it in your heart while your words are the words of dhikr. So for example, sometimes I'll be in sajda, and I'll just be like, Subhanallah, and I'm making dua to Allah in my head, in my sujood. And I'm just saying, Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, Ya Allah, Ya Rab. You can, Ya Rab, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Rab, Ya Rahman. And you're just making dua the entire time in your head. It's like going in English. Your dua is raging in your head. But your tongue is still limited to the words of the salah and the words of dhikr. Okay, next thing. They mentioned to elongate the letter Hamza in takbir. But to be honest, this is more like for an Arabic speaker. Non-Arab speakers, don't worry about it. Otherwise, you might get OCD. For one's nakedness, at least 1/4 of a limb to be uncovered for the length of time it takes to perform an integral of prayer. That means for 3 subhanallahs. Okay, so for example, let's give an example here. Okay, so let's say that, okay, let me see here. I wanted to take this step by step. So let's say, what's a very common thing that gets exposed? For example, the wrist and above of a woman, right? So if she's in prayer, and what's 1/4? Let's say you just guess, maybe from here to there is maybe like here. So if it goes like that, Subhanallah, 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 prayer is broken. If something gets uncovered and then you cover it back, no problem. Like the hair in the hijab, it goes like this and then you just go like that, no problem. For men, unfortunately, you're making sujood and someone sees your backside or something, you just pull up your pants, But if it's less than 1/4 and it's showing, it's not supposed to, but it doesn't break your prayer. So for example, for a woman, some hair is showing, okay, here. It's not going to break your prayer even if it's through the entire prayer. But it should not be done. Does that make sense? For a man too, if he's walking around, his pants or his shirt is too short and you're seeing his backside, for example, if it's 1/4 of his buttocks for 3 subhanallahs, it breaks the prayer. But that's a lot to show, okay? Now, sometimes it happens with the knees, okay? So someone's shorts are short and you're short because the knees are supposed to be covered. So 3 subhanallahs, sometimes from the get-go, their prayer is not valid because they're not covering their nakedness, right? So this is something to keep in mind, okay? And this is when it happens by accident. Of course, revealing your nakedness on purpose, you're not supposed to do it all. Any questions about that before we move on? Yeah, so it should not be okay, so you're supposed to go right to where the watch sits. That's what you're supposed to cover. Like, see the bone? Sometimes they design ladies' clothing so it's a little bit less. You should try to put something on, like something, a cardigan or something to cover it. But if that's not the case, then it is still valid as long as like a quarter of that area is not showing. How much that is, I can't tell, you can't tell, you just make your judgment. And, don't try to assume everything is okay rather than things are not okay. But generally speaking, we should all, it's not unnatural. For example, when my sheikh, used to pray, he would like put on his jubba. Even though he's wearing a shirt under, he would put something on. He would put on a turban. And you wonder, like, people who are close to Allah, who love Allah, they want to meet Allah in the best state. Whereas we became, as long as we're wearing, pajamas, some raggedy old t-shirt, we're praying. People coming to prayer in like just normal clothes. Whereas the people who love Allah, even in the depths of the night when they're alone with Allah, Imam used to pray his tahajjud dressed like a groom. He used to come prepared like he was dressed for a wedding to pray alone in the night tahajjud. Because why? It puts you into a mood. If you're wearing a suit for a guy, you feel like you're about to go make a business deal or something, right? So when you come to Allah dressed in the clothes of piety, or at least dressing nice, smelling nice, your prayer experience is enhanced, right? Okay, question about this part, yeah?
So, I know you said if you were to pass the knees, sometimes if I was just out and I have basketball court, that get just past the knees, but when I go down and kind of
I know, yeah, this is a challenge because then you're sitting in tahiyat and your whole knee is exposed. There's two things I have to suggest for this. Number one, find longer shorts if you can. But if you can't, because it's not everybody can do that, and they actually don't make shorts like this. One thing you could do is kind of pull the shorts down a little bit without, where, you could do that. Or you take the Shafi'i position. This is where another position comes in handy. And says, what are you going to say? The whole soccer team's prayer is like invalid or whatever? Then at least if you're not showing your thigh, then there is a school of thought that says it's okay. So, for people who are in that situation, like you kind of give a different ruling. You take a different ruling as a easy kind of dispensation. Does that make sense? Yeah, but it's better to, to cover it. But if you can't, Allah knows best. What's that? You could, that would, like a knee pads or something. Yeah, I know this one brother, it's Indonesian, I think, or Cambodian brother. Every single day he comes for dhuhr, and he wraps his waistcloth around. And I always wonder, like, why is he doing this? It's just out of more modesty. So you try to do what you can. Inshallah, now at least there's some leeway in it, right? Yes, Ibrahim, about this topic? Yeah, that does not break your prayer. Where is Dr. Osman? He's getting. Take him back to this part on the YouTube when Dr. Osman says, "Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad." Yeah, actually, this your prayer is intact. Your prayer is intact. Sometimes I've done this too, been like Allahu Akbar, because they're all making noise. TV is still on, video games are going, they're still talking like this, they're making jokes, and I'm like afraid I'm going to break my prayer if I keep listening to their jokes. So you'd be like, Allahu Akbar, just to kind of, you can do that. Okay, next thing is this. Let's see. To carry an unexcused amount of filth, it breaks your prayer. So if you're carrying more filth than this area, okay, that breaks your prayer. Unless, of course, there is no other way to remove it, and then you pray, just out of kind of desperation, but then you make it up afterwards. Now, for the follower to precede the imam by an entire integral, meaning an entire movement, which the imam does not perform afterwards with the follower, or which the follower does not repeat afterwards. In other words, let's say the imam is reciting, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and the follower goes into ruku before the imam is still standing up. And then the follower comes back. He just preceded the imam by one entire movement. His prayer is broken. Okay? But if he goes into ruku first and then the imam joins him there, they're together now. Okay? Now, this does not mean if his head touches the ground before the imam, his prayer is broken. We're saying the entire one action, going into it, performing it, coming out of it, but no one does this in real life, okay? This is completely theoretical. So if you happen to, do sujood before the imam, it's not good, but your prayer is not broken by this, yeah? Yeah. Okay, you can come back with it. So now, if you miss the last one, if you miss an integral, meaning if you miss a fard aspect of the prayer, and you do not make it up later before the end of the prayer, your prayer is invalid. So let's say you only did, let's say in 4 rakats fard, Isha, I only prayed 3 rakats and I forgot to pray the 4th rakat. Then I said salams and I get up and I walk away. Someone says, you only prayed 3. My prayer is broken. My prayer is invalid. You have to repeat it. But let's say you only prayed 3 rakats, and then at the end you realize you made that mistake. What do? Sajda sahu or sujood sahu. You make the forgetfulness prostration. Let's say you said salaam alaikum, then you're like, without talking, you realize you can still correct. As long as you're sitting down, still facing the qibla, and you have not spoken or done any other action, said salaam alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, and then you do the sujood sahwi. And we're going to teach you how to do that right now. Yes. Oh yeah, that happens. You're doubtful. This is actually covered. We say that the first time you have a doubt, repeat the prayer. Yeah, just like if you're like, did I do 3 or 4? Okay, I'm just going to repeat the prayer. But you do that once. Because the next time that doubt comes, shaitan is going to come again and again and tell you every single time you pray now, was that 3 or 4? Was that 2 or 3? Right? So once, then when that happens, where you're like, oh, I don't know, is it 3 or 4? You just ask your heart, what is it? And if you're like 3, make your heart set on 3 and continue as though it's 3. If it's like 4, make your heart set on 4. Because there is another way where you, okay, if you have this, then you do an extra one, and then you do this. But the problem is people's waswasa gets so high, every single prayer now they're doubting it. Because we all get distracted during our prayer. So what happens is if you continue to give in to the doubt, you'll just find it happens all the time. This is why my teacher just shut it down and said, look, ask yourself, 1 second, what is it? First number comes to your mind, settle your heart and keep going. That way it cuts out the waswasa of shaitan, right? Otherwise the shaitan will steal the entire piece from your prayer. Next thing, now these are the things that are disliked in the prayer, meaning they're disliked, meaning it doesn't break your prayer, but it's something that is makruh. Okay, it's not good to do. Number 1, to deliberately omit a wajib or sunnah act is makruh. But the wajib is way worse. It is makruh tahriman, meaning it's almost haram to do that deliberately. And the sunnah act, to deliberately omit it, is a lightly disliked, mildly disliked. You get it? So a wajib, to actually omit it purposely, is greatly disliked. To omit a sunnah act is slightly disliked, meaning it's not sinful, but you shouldn't make a habit of doing it. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So next thing, number 2, something that is disliked in prayer is to fiddle around with your clothes, with your body, even without excessive movement. Because if it was excessive movement, your prayer is broken. But like for example, today, I think we're going to get to this part. It's going to get to this part. But like fiddling around means you're on your phone for no reason. It's different if you're just silencing your phone for 1 second. But you're just scrolling, or some people are just like, and just going like this. You're just like, come on, you don't have to do it. Or you're just, a person's in prayer going like this. I've seen people doing this. You're just like this, just like this. Like, this is fiddling around. You're fiddling around with your belt all the time. Some people are fiddling around with the hijab. Like, okay, your hijab is fine, sister. It's okay, it's in place. But still, she's still correcting it all the time. It is disliked to fiddle around with your body or your garment, okay? To wipe away pebbles on the ground. So for example, if you're going to make sujood, you're in the parking lot, you just decided to pray on the rough gravel. As you're going down, you're allowed to do once, move once, if you're in your prayer. So for example, you're going down in sujood, and as you're going down, you can do once, like this, move, go down. But can you go like this? Disliked. Even if it's slight, like even if you're just going like this. Disliked. You do it once, yeah, take it out, and then make your sujood. But you don't continue to do those things. It's disliked to do it because you're not focusing on your prayer. Next one is to crack the knuckles. Is my son here? So we were praying today. Allahu Akbar. And he's going. And you know, so some people can crack every single way. Even ways that you didn't know you can crack. Okay? So sometimes actually, I know one person, like they said, that the prayer is when I crack my knuckles. Like first rakat, I crack this way. Second rakat, I crack this way. Then third, I do this hand, and you know. So some people, they've just made it a habit. So I said, no, this is makruh. First of all, you are distracting yourself, and you're also distracting those around you because you're hearing crack, 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 crack. And that's not something that we don't want to hear. Cracking your knuckles is actually makruh tahriman in prayer. Okay? And did you know, even outside prayer, they considered it slightly disliked to just crack your knuckles for no reason. Because it becomes a habit that you're doing, and you're just kind of like sitting there all the time. So they consider it like it's not really the best thing to do. Now, he said, well, what happens if it feels like you got to crack them? I said, that's because you cracked them that it feels like that. Right? Because you start, that's why it's like, oh man, you're so young, you already started cracking your knuckles, now you're going to be doing it all the time. Then you're going to tell somebody else too, hey, can you pull this, can you pull that? You know, so it's just like be in a state. If you're in an interview with your king or president or something, you're not going to be cracking your knuckles, and it's makruh to turn your neck, but it doesn't break your prayer. Okay, and to sit with one's knees up. So if you're going in tahiyat, but you're like, oh, I don't want to sit like that, so you sit like this. That is makruh, unless for some reason you medically or you physically cannot sit. Some people cannot sit on their knees. So they have to sit like cross-legged or some other way. If you medically, physically cannot sit like this on the knees, it's still better to sit on the ground than on a chair. So the preference is this. The preference is obviously sitting down like this, and this is the sunnah way of sitting down, right? Like this. You see how my foot? One is up like this. This is called iftirash, and one is down like this. Can everybody see it? Okay. Now, I don't think these people on the camera are not going to be able to see this. There's nothing I can do. And now, there's another way of sitting, and this is also how they recommend, like women can sit like this too, but even in other schools, they sit like this, where they put a buttock on the ground like this. It's a little harder to sit like this, but the Prophet ﷺ apparently when he was growing older, and it gets a lot of pressure, he sat like that, okay? Now, it is, you can sit like this, but it's not the right way. So there is a kind of slight dislike in sitting like this, because it's not the right way. But sometimes you might do it if, for example, like the ground is wet, you're praying outside, it's dirty, you want to keep your shoes. So some people do that, right? What else was I going to say? Yeah, so now if you can't sit like this, then sit in a position that you can manage. So even if you have to sit like this, sometimes people sit like this. That's better than sitting in a chair. So, but sometimes people cannot sit in a chair at all. Sometimes people cannot sit in a chair at all. You know why? Because we're not accustomed in this society to sit on the ground. Think about this. If you weren't Muslim, alhamdulillah we're Muslim, when would you sit on the ground in your life? When have you ever sat on the ground in your life? Almost never, right? So therefore, sitting on a chair is kind of like, when the scholars said this, like, oh, sitting on the chair is not allowed unless if you can sit on the ground. But I said, a lot of people, their knees can't handle the ground because they never sit on their knees. Back as well, right? So it's okay if you need to sit on the chair. Yeah.
So if the position that you said where it's disliked, if that's the only way that you can sit on the ground, should that person just continue doing that?
No, you can sit on the ground any way you need to. So medically, if you can't sit like that, you can sit on the ground any way you need to. Okay. In fact, even if you can't stand up and pray, if it's always better to sit on the ground, direct ground. And if that is uncomfortable, then go to the chair, right? Okay, because they didn't have chairs in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So that's why when they said to sit and pray, they meant sit on the ground and pray. They didn't mean sit on a chair and pray. But we now made chair the new sitting. It's not ideal, but it's not a sin if you did that. Some people cannot sit like that with their toes like that. Even when you're in sujood, you're supposed to have all your toes pointing to the qibla. You know, I remember once when I was a young buck and I just became Muslim. And you know, ideally speaking, your toes should all be pointing to the qibla. So when you make your sujood, it should be like this. Now that's very hard for a lot of people, okay? So I once saw a very quiet but very practicing man, older than me, and he was like he was like this. Now you're not supposed to do that, but maybe medically somebody cannot bend their toes or something. So I went to him after. I said, "Brother, I just want to let you know, I think it might be sunnah to like at least have some of your toes facing the qibla." He said, "Actually, it's sunnah to have all of your toes facing the qibla. But you have to ask yourself, why were you worrying about my toes rather than worrying about your prayer?" And when I you know, this is such a lesson. I was like maybe 19 years old when I just became Muslim. And he asked me when he asked me back that question, I realized something. That learning this knowledge, and this is a big part of what we're learning today, learning this knowledge is for ourselves to come closer to Allah. It's definitely not to criticize yourself in your prayer to make you feel like you're not praying properly at all, and to beat on yourself. If it's information, that means we're running out of battery. If learning this, I think we're okay. If learning this information ruins your peace in your prayer and makes you feel like you're always in doubt, I said it's probably better you didn't take this class at all. Because the connection you had with Allah before was organic, it was nice. So these details are not things you think about in your prayer. These are details you learn outside, you implement them once, twice, 3 times like riding a bike, and then you don't think about it. But if your entire prayer is my hand like this or like this, did I do this or did I do this? You have lost the point of prayer. You have lost the point of prayer, right? And it's definitely not to start pointing out mistakes in everybody else. When you start doing that, you can know right away that you've lost the point of this whole thing. Yes?
When you're sitting down on the ground, like let's say for the cold, if you're both people of a leggings or whatever, are you able to use something to kind of help yourself up?
Yeah, you can if you need to. You see Dr. Siddiqui, when he prays sunnahs on his own, there's that little Quran like stand, and he just keeps it over there just in case he needs to brace like this to get up. But mashallah, look, even mashallah in that age, he can pray up and down and lead the prayer and everything. And what I've noticed is this, that the more you try to do your prayer fully as we age, and as much as we can, the more our health and our body allows us to continue to pray for as long as we can. Okay? If we stop trying, like if you need to sit on a chair, no problem. For whatever reason you need to sit on the chair, it's not a problem. But if you do it just out of laziness, or you do it because you don't want to be so flexible, you will lose the flexibility in your own body. Why would you do that? The prayer, one of the benefits of the prayer is that somebody who's in their mid-80s is still able to get up and get down, and it's a form of kind of exercise. That's not the intention. But do you see how engaging the entire body, the mind, the heart, the tongue, even the eyes are worshiping Allah? Like ideally, you're not supposed to be closing your eyes. You're supposed to keep them open. Because even your eyes are praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the place that they're looking at. It's in obedience to Allah, right? So if you need to sit on a chair, no problem, but it shouldn't be, unless it's nafil and you want half the reward, but it shouldn't be for no reason. It should be because there's a difficulty. Make sense? Okay. Next thing, it is also disliked to put your hands on your hips. So like praying like this, because it looks like you're arrogant, okay? It's disliked to put one's entire forearms for a man on the ground. It's like praying like a dog. You're supposed to pray like this, like with your hands like this, not like this. You know, like a dog? Yeah, so like that. You're not supposed to pray like that for men. It's makruh as well, slightly disliked, to pray rolling up your sleeves, okay? Now what this means is, it doesn't mean that you can't wear a t-shirt. You can wear a t-shirt, okay? But the thing is, like, for example, you shouldn't like go into prayer and be like, okay, let's pray. Because would you walk into an interview like this? You wouldn't. So after you make your wudu, if you can, put your sleeves down. In fact, it says, even if you have your sleeves up and you quickly got into prayer like this, it's permissible to slowly put your sleeves back down. just so you enter a state again. Your comportment should look like good. And so this is why, even though the Indo-Pak scholars, they believe in rolling up the pants, the Arab scholars, when they saw this, they say no, because you're not going to walk into like a job interview with your pants all scrunched up unless it's neatly folded, like very nicely in the crease and everything. That's good. But a Muslim should not look like completely disheveled. And so sometimes we do this, we dress good for others, but for Allah, we don't dress good. Okay, next. What does it say? For men to only pray in the lower garment. So you wrap a towel around, this is makruh. It's still valid. Like you're on the beach, sometimes, oh man, prayer time is going, you quickly just wrapped and you did it. A man wakes up, he has to take a shower after his relations, but he's missing Fajr, he quickly does it. Okay, that's different. But if you can try to help it, cover more of your body. To gather one's garment close to the body before going into prostration is disliked. What does that mean? Like you don't want your dress to fall on the ground. So what do? You lift up your clothes like this, and then you go so that your dress is nice. No, when you're in prayer, right, you let go of your concerns of your clothing and everything, and you just pray to Allah. So you're not trying to gather up your clothes. To place a shawl on your head or your shoulders, and letting the ends hang down below, okay? So you know that kind of Saudi style for men. This is for men, not for women. The Saudi style of like draping something over yourself like this. This in the Hanafi school is makruh. Not sinful, but it's makruh. Why? Because when they get back up, you notice it shifts. And a lot of times when you see the reciters from those places, they're wearing the cloth around their head. When they get back up, they're adjusting. They're adjusting it. So it creates a useless thing to do, right? Same thing with like a scarf. If you have a scarf, tie it. But it's like going like this, and you're going like this, and you're going like this, now you're going like this. Anything that distracts you in your prayer, right? There's no ruling on a tie. You can have a tie when you pray. But I notice sometimes people just put it inside so it doesn't like continuously get in the way. Sometimes you're making sajda and the tie is in your face, and you're moving the tie, and you get what I'm saying? So, okay, what else? Let's see. Yes, it is makruh to close your eyes in the prayer, except it is mildly disliked, unless it's for a legitimate reason, like it helps you concentrate. The author of this book, my dear friend Sheikh Faraz, he's a translator, I should say, not the author. He's a translator. I always used to notice. He's older than me. He's like my big brother, and he used to be praying like this sometimes. And I used to be like, what? Why is that? He's following this ruling where sometimes they find that closing their eyes is the only way they can concentrate in the prayer. Okay? If you did it for that reason, it's okay. But it's not the original thing. The original thing is you should have open eyes. When else might you have to close your eyes? So for example, you're praying in public, and gosh, I've had to pray in situations where you got to close your eyes, okay? You're praying in an airplane. There's an air hostess in a skirt in front of you passing by, everything. So I'm just going to close my eyes and pray, because I don't want to see that during my, even in or out of the prayer. But the point is, just because you don't want to see haram, you just close your eyes and you pray. That's okay. You see something funny happening in front of you, you close your eyes. You don't want to, Okay, let's keep going. What else is disliked? But to yawn in your prayer without a need, like if it overcomes you, that's different. But you try to suppress it. It's disliked to stretch your arms. So for you're praying just to go like this. Oh, Hafiz Nabi is reciting a long one, Just go like this. You don't do that. If you need just while you're moving, yeah, okay. Cover your nose or your mouth, except when you're yawning, okay. To prostrate with the forehead covered is for men. It is disliked, but if you did it, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so if you look at the 276, let me look at here. This is mildly disliked, unless you have an excuse. So for example, maybe the ground is very cold or very hot, and if you put your bare forehead, it's going to burn it or freeze it. Then, okay, let's say for example, you took your hat and you just prostrated on your hat. SubhanAllah, I once met somebody here. They said, I pray in my baseball cap. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, because when you pray, the cap just moves up like this. He goes, no. I pray and the cap goes down like this. And I just prostrate. I said, how do you do that? He said, I just do it. I said, okay, that's up to you. It's still valid, but it's disliked because the ground is supposed to touch, the head is supposed to feel the ground. But if, for example, you have a hat, did you notice the Sindhi topis? That's why they have that little opening over there, so that you can do that, right? So, alhamdulillah. These are just details now. There's nothing serious about these things. No, open. Even sajda. But if you're closing your eyes, it's okay, right? It's like to prostrate on a picture of an animate creature is disliked, you know, in the place of prostration where the face touches the ground because it resembles worshiping something. This is the worst thing, okay? However, if you're standing with it under the feet, it's permissible. So for example, let's say, for example, I need to pray on something, so I take my kid's towel or their blanket, and I go like this. Now the towel has like a cartoon character on it, like a Minions or something, cartoon character on this towel. If I'm prostrating on the Minion character, that's very, very disliked, because you're not supposed to pray to an image. So prostrating on top of an image is wrong. Now, if I flip it, and I put the character under my feet, now I'm disrespecting it. Now I can pray on it. Does that make sense? So if ever you get into a situation where the ground has images itself, try to stand on that area where the picture is, and don't prostrate on an image, because it resembles it. Don't worry, you're not a kafir, it's disliked. Okay? Sometimes people get OCD, and they say, oh no, there's a picture on the wall over there, maybe I'm bowing down to it. Some people get OCD. Is this like a cross? I'm bowing down to it. Am I kafir? Don't ever think that your iman is at threat. Your iman is so solid, the shaitan wants to make you think that your iman is not secure. You can pray in front of a mirror, no problem. So you can. It's not like I'm worshiping myself. It's fine. This is a kind of another myth that we have. You can pray in front of a mirror. It's fine. It's also disliked to pray in a road. Why? You're disturbing people, right? So like this idea that we are Muslims, we're going to take over the street. Like, I don't know why, like, you know, in India, sometimes you get this idea, like, you know, they're blocking the whole road and people have to go. And it's like, the non-Muslim's not going to be happy if they're like, honk, 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 and you're blocking the road. Unless you get what? Unless you get permission from the government. If the government says, yeah, block Times Square, block the road to Times Square for your Taraweeh as a dawah or as a public activity, no problem. But the path, that includes when you're on an airplane, the path where the air hostess is about to take her cart. Very embarrassing. MashaAllah, Dadiwala, Muslim, like he's praying in the middle of it. Everyone else is waiting there, the cart, they're waiting there, cursing this guy. This is, you know, how makruh is that? It is makruh to pray in the bathroom. Again, not invalid, but it's makruh. Or to pray in a graveyard. What does that mean? That means on the graves themselves. Sometimes in a Muslim graveyard, they will have a masjid on the property to pray quick janazah prayer, okay? Or somebody wants to worship Allah. But what they mean is at the grave itself, you don't pray. Because this is resembling other religions that used to do this, right? It's like a shirky thing to do. Now, if somebody did do it, doesn't mean they're not a Muslim. Just means it's makruh. To pray near filth. If you can help it, why pray next to dog mess? Go a little bit further, right? It's disliked, but it's not invalidated. To pray on stolen property. Subhanallah, this whole land is stolen property, right? Like, what are we going to do? They stole it from the natives, right? But you know what I mean. In this case, what they mean here is, you know, to pray on someone else's stolen property is not going to affect your prayer, but it's not a good thing to do, right? Like you did qabza of someone's house and then you go and make it into a masjid to try to like launder. You know, this happens in some countries. To pray in a stolen garment, to steal someone's clothing. Or to pray, to make wudu from stolen water. Makruh. I mean, it's still valid wudu. What's an example of that, by the way? So I need to make wudu, and I see a guy, his hose is there, non-Muslim, well, let's say, and I just go, what is the big difference if I go and I take some of his water? So I open his hose without him looking, fill my thing, and then I make wudu, because I'm Muslim, I have to pray. No, that's his water. Did you ask him permission? No? You don't get it. I have to make my wudu. No, my friend, that's someone else's. You can ask permission, but you can't do it without permission. Unfortunately, sometimes Muslims, when they get religious but they don't have knowledge, they feel like they are entitled, they own the world. Everyone has to bow down to them, right? And this is when you get this attitude, this is when non-Muslims start to hate Muslims. Like, you come here and you take over. And then, in Quebec, they've banned prayer in public. In Canada, in Quebec, you cannot pray in public. Now, that is Islamophobic hate, but some of it, we cannot assist the Islamophobes by being a nuisance in a public area unless you're off to the side in a respectful manner, neat manner, Okay, I think that's everything, no? Oh no, there's a whole bunch. Okay, to pray while you have the urge to urinate or defecate or gas. Okay, what does that mean? That does not mean even slightly. It means that it's so much that you're like dancing, like you're just holding it back. Everybody, if you can think about it, you probably can say you have a little need to go, okay? That's not what I mean. What I mean is that you're like, you're dancing and this is about to come out and it is makruh tahrim, and actually it's sinful to do that. Except there might be some exceptions. For example, like the prayer time is about to end, but otherwise you're supposed to break your prayer and go. Even if you come here and you started the prayer already, I gotta go to the bathroom. Rather than say, no man, I gotta do it, I gotta stay, I'm gonna get all this reward, I drove 20 minutes to get here. It's better you break your prayer, go, relieve yourself and come back. Why? Because if you pray when you have to go to the bathroom, your focus is not on your prayer. Your focus is just on making sure you don't pass gas. So your prayer basically became just about urine and feces, basically, in your mind. So this is what we tried to prevent. But again, sometimes, people, there may be some situations where they're like, you know what, if I go to the bathroom, I'm so tired, I will not finish my prayer. The other thing is, you're not supposed to harm yourself. And somebody who keeps holding their urine back, either they get a UTI, urine infection, or their bladder gets weak and it gets harder and harder to hold it as they get older. So a lot of kids, they do this. They run around and they're playing, they don't go to the bathroom. And then you can tell when they're talking to you, say, go to the bathroom, go use the bathroom. Boys especially, I don't know girls. This is a bad habit. All right, remember my mother said, all the Muslim girls at work, because they don't want to use the bathroom. So Allah made it that we should make it easy for our body. Next thing is to pray in work clothing. This doesn't mean your uniform from work. It means like you go in painting clothes or farm clothes and you're dirty. It's still valid, but it's not the best. To pray on a garment in which there's a picture of an animate creature. So you've got a big Tupac shirt, okay? Try not to come to the masjid in the Tupac shirt, okay? Try not to come, like you got your favorite wrestling characters. I get it. You like your shirt, but try not to pray. It's makruh to pray in it, okay? And I'm talking about a big creature. Now, if it's a small icon, like the size of a small bird, they say, like Lacoste, Polo, what else? What's that? Loud. No, Nike is not an animate object. It's talking about an image of a person or an image of like Puma. Like there's a bunch of them that have an animal on it. If it's a small icon, it's okay. It's not the best, but it's okay. But if it's like a big picture, like I said, your Tupac shirt, try not to pray with your Tupac shirt on. It's still valid, but it's not the best thing you can do. Let's see, other details. Because it's like carrying an idol, right? That's like carrying an idol. To pray with your head uncovered is it's against the sunnah, but it's not sinful. But to pray with your head uncovered, unless it is done out of humility. Now here's the interesting thing. Most people in our time do not cover their head. It was a common Muslim culture that you would wear a kufi, topi, taqiyya or something on the head. And so this is why it's sunnah. There's no hadith that says cover your head during prayer. It's just the Prophet always did it. Now, here's a trick. So it is slightly disliked to not cover your head, unless you're doing it out of humility. So if you just said to yourself, oh Allah, I'm a loser. I'm nothing. I'm humble in front of you. And so I'm burying my head for this reason. I'm not covering my head. Then it's fine. Because it used to be considered that if you don't cover your head, your crown used to be, your sign of, you could say, your pride, covering your head. So it's not sinful. Okay, Quick question about anything we've discussed. Sorry? That's for only for men. Yeah, women have to cover their head for sure. Yeah. Yes.
If you break your prayer, for example, like you turn away, you realize you broke the prayer, you just quickly go fast,
No, you start over. You start over again.
but you start again immediately after.
Well, you don't. You can or you don't have. That's up to you. Because now you're at liberty to. You're not in the prayer anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah, you're not in prayer anymore. Yes. Yeah, but how big is that? Is that bigger than a? Is he bigger than a bird or smaller than a bird? Like a small. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not going to invalidate your prayer. Does that make sense? It's not going to. It's not going to be. But should you cover it up? Sure. Smiling, no. Laughing silently, no. Laughing aloud so that the other person hears it, for sure. Not like, not like some slight thing and you're not sure if you heard it, but the other person hears you, then that's different. That breaks your wudu as well, actually, in your prayer. Yeah, as a punishment for laughing during your prayer. There was another question out here. Three girls. Would you guys lift up your hand? No? Just stretching. Inshallah. Yes? We're going to talk about that. How do you come late to prayer? We have time. Okay? So it's also makruh to pray around something that will distract you. So the TV's on, try not to pray. The FIFA match is on. Go somewhere else and pray. It's disliked to distract yourself. To pray in a congregation standing alone in a row. So when everyone's praying in lines, you're just praying off by yourself. It's valid, but it's disliked. Okay? You should try to join the line if you can. That's the best thing to do. Okay? To pray in front of a open furnace or an ember because it can come and burn you, right? And to pray in front of people while they're sleeping. So someone is sleeping, and this is not disliked unless one fears that it may cause them to laugh. Okay, so for example, you're praying in front of someone who's sleeping. Okay? Now that person passes gas in their prayer. It makes you want to laugh, maybe. Or they get surprised when they wake up and they see you, and then you get surprised too. So the point is, reduce your distractions. Yet the Rasul ﷺ, he used to pray in the same room where his wife was sleeping, and they had such little room in their room that he would tap her foot and she would move her foot so he could make sajda. And when he got up from sajda, she would put her leg back. That's how much little space they had in their room. Okay? So it is also disliked to wipe the dirt or sweat off that is not distracting you. So for example, if it's distracting you, you can go like this. Okay? But for no reason, you're just going like this, that's disliked. Okay. Let's talk about something else. So we're right here at the end of the main thing. But for example, let's see. You can pray, by the way, you can pray facing a copy of the Quran. Now, if you fear harm and there's a scorpion, actually, if you can actually kill it in 2 strikes, you can do it. I know, because I'm done the thing, right? So for example, like you're praying and a scorpion is coming, right? You could go. If a spider's gonna harm, if it's something that's gonna harm you, if it's something that's gonna harm you, you can go like that. Even if you have to turn away from the qibla, if it's a snake, why? Because that's saving your life, kind of thing, right? So you just like that, you can do it twice. Once it gets like too much, then your prayer is broken. The point is this, that for things that are, necessities, it's different. You can also pray on a carpet or a rug, because there are some people who believe that you cannot pray on a carpet or rug. The Shia brothers and sisters, they have to pray on this turba. Because they believe that you can only pray on natural substances. This is not true. You can pray on a carpet. We do it all the time. Yes? Yes. If there's an emergency or there is a need, you can break your prayer. For example, like it happened, the people were praying, somebody had a heart attack or they had like a, distress, a health issue. And everyone's like, I don't know what I can do. No, you can help somebody, you can break the prayer for yourself, for someone else. May Allah give afiyah and protect. You hear like a noise and some Islamophobe has broken into the masjid, then you don't have to stand there in prayer until, this guy shoots somebody, God forbid. No, you break your prayer and you address what's happening. Someone is about to fall in a well. A blind person is about to fall in. This is the example they give. You're praying and a blind person is about to fall in the well. You must break your prayer and help them. A child is about to walk and touch the stove. You break your prayer and you do it, right? So it is permissible to break the prayer if you're being robbed or if your items are being robbed, for example, right? You have saving life, you're afraid something is going to get damaged. In other words, if there's a reason and you want to prevent some sort of harm, you can break your prayer. And if you get a call for help, for an emergency or something, then it may well be wajib to break your prayer, right? And if a midwife is worried that the mother is giving birth and the nurse is helping her, then she can even miss her prayer and delay it past the time. Okay? What's that? Yeah, of course. See, this is what I'm saying, right? Yeah, like so for example, mashallah, you have these videos where the earthquake is happening, people are still in the prayer. And the people who ran away are not like weak in iman. They're saving themselves. And those who stay, they choose to stay. Right? But it's not like you have to. Same thing if you're praying and you're fearing robbers or something like that, you can break your prayer and go. You're praying in a strange parking lot, especially the sisters. There's a strange man lurking around. You can, I don't feel comfortable here, right? God forbid. And praying on a riding animal, we talked about this. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Praying, traveler, that we'll have to do another time. A prayer of a sick person, or if you're praying on a chair. So if you're not able to, let's say for example, if you're not able to stand and pray, you pray on the ground. If you cannot sit on the ground, you pray on a chair. How do you make sujood and ruku'? So then you go like this, just with your neck. You don't have to actually go fully like this. Just with your neck like this. Ruku', up. Sujood just has to be a little bit lower. You do not have to go like this completely. Okay? It's just neck movements. It's just symbolic at the end of the day. Okay, so you're praying like this. Like this. They say that if, in the Hanafi school, if you can stand, but you can't make sajda, so you can stand up and pray, but when it comes for sajda, you sit down and then you go like this. Did you know they say it's actually better that you pray sitting down the entire time, completely the entire time? Because it's better to be close. If you cannot make sajda, it's better for your body to be closer to the earth. You understand? So this is something, if you can't make a sujood on the ground, sit on the chair and pray. You don't have to stand up. Okay? Now there's, what's that? Any question? Yeah, ideally, salam alaikum. You could do that if you want to, like salam out. You could do it that way. But I haven't seen, I'd have to check if there's like an actual formal way that you have to do it. You don't have to do it in any formal way. Right, let me see here, breaking the prayer. It is not permissible to break the fard prayer if your parents are calling you, except for an emergency. However, for nafil or sunnah prayers, if the parent does not know that you're praying, then you should break the prayer and respond. If the parent knows that you're praying and they're just calling you to break your prayer, then you don't have to respond. So, you're praying sunnah. And your mom says, beta, you have to say, okay, break the prayer. Yes, mom. Okay? But now you're praying, and she sees that you're praying. It's like, this guy's always praying his namaz. Beta, you don't know. I'm in my prayer. Because now they're defying the idea of praying, so they're going against deen. Okay? But before, they needed your help. But when it's fard, you don't help, you don't break your prayer unless it's an emergency. You just make it up. That's it. You just, in the corner. I'm sorry? A fajr? Sajda. Oh, the sajda is that one part of your forehead should be on the ground and one part of all of your limbs should be touching the ground. Ideally, all of it. But if you can't, just even some of it is okay. Right? It's still valid. Yeah. So this is another thing people get. So you're not supposed to do that. Technically speaking, like I have heard scholars start to say like, oh, you're not technically, all your limbs are not touching, but don't nitpick yourself. You know what I mean? You can find a million ways to, because sometimes people just do it naturally. They just lift up their foot a little bit when they're in sajda. As long as not the entire time, then that's okay. Because you touched your feet down. You understand what he's talking about? When they're making sujood and people are like this. Now they lift up their foot a little bit. You're not supposed to be like, so if the guy's like this, definitely nothing, it's not a sajda. But if it lifts up a little bit, don't try to, this is why I'm saying, like, the first time you you learn these, you start to become so cerebral in your prayer. This should become, like, you worry about it outside of prayer, inside of prayer, you're with Allah. That's it, Okay, any other, now we can go into questions because we have about... Guys, if you guys can just put up a hand so I can see who I'm asking. Yes. Yes, so in congregation, I thought I mentioned this. You do the thana, you do the tasbihat, and you do the tahiyat and the salawat. Yeah, so you don't do Quran. That's the only thing you don't do, actually, Quran. Yeah, yes. How do you pray on a plane? We will answer that question. I will answer the question. I'll do a Q&A session when we come back after the Isha prayer, but let's do it fast so we also wrap up fast, inshallah. And we make a dua, inshallah, after. Assalamu alaikum. And if any of you don't come back, may Allah bless you guys. Thank you for coming, inshallah. But we'll gather just for like 15 minutes, like 20 minutes like that.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة. قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استووا مستقيموا واعتدلوا تراصوا وتناظروا. الله أكبر. الله الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده الله